All right, guys, it is 3 o'clock. We would like to welcome you back for the second part of our session, Letters for North Carolina's Little Learners. Again, we recognize that you have many things that you can choose to allocate your time for, and we appreciate you choosing to spend your time with us today. We know many of you will be leaving for spring break over the next couple of weeks and wanted to make sure that you had all the information you needed prior to the break, which is why we decided to move forward with back-to-back sessions. We would like to take a moment to review some logistics. All participant cameras and microphones have been disabled for today's session. We have created a note catcher tool for participants. This is being dropped into the chat. Please note that this will be a view-only copy, which is different than yesterday. If you have Google, you can save a copy or add it to your drive in order to edit. If you do not have a Google account, you should be able to download it as a Word document and then edit from there. The note catcher tool houses links to this presentation, a space for you to take notes, and we've included links and resources that you might find particularly helpful. This session will be recorded and posted on our NC DPI Office of Early Learning website within 1 week of today's session. If you have questions, we do invite you to drop them in the Q&A. Please note that due to the number of participants, we will take these questions back and address them in a follow-up document or through an individual reach out versus the context of today's session. CEUs will be provided for your attendance today. In order to receive a CEU certificate, participants must engage in at least 85% of the session and complete an exit survey at the end of the session. Attendance is based on the WebEx report and is connected to your email. We encourage you to sign in through your individual registration link in order to help us better track your attendance. Let's get started with some introductions. My name is Cameron Amin, and I serve the Piedmont Triad region. I am joined by Holly Lee, who serves the North Central region, and Jessica Fitzgerald, our Northwest consultant. We would also like to welcome additional preschool leaders that have contributed to today's content. Dawn Meskel and Keisha Walker, who are our 619 co-coordinators, Jody Kuhn, who supports Title I preschool, and Macy Jones with Head Start Collaboration Office. We would like to give a special thank you to the DCDEE folks that have lifted many questions from the field as well and have shaped today's session. So for our outcomes today, participants will explore the content and participant experience for Letters for Early Childhood Educators. Participants will also provide guidance, promising practice, and resources for successful implementation of Letters for Early Childhood Educators' professional development. So let's get started. As a reminder, the Excellent Public Schools Act of 2021, also known as Read to Achieve, directs DPI to establish an early literacy program. It also directs the department to consult with the Department of Health and Human Services to implement the early literacy program to build strong foundational early literacy skills, utilizing the science of reading for children in North Carolina pre-kindergarten, NC pre-K programs. As part of the early literacy program, DPI is required to provide literacy training to pre-K through 5th grade teachers and administrators, including those who work in the NC pre-K program. The purpose of the training is to ensure developmentally appropriate instruction is grounded in the science of reading. In Session Law 2021-3, DPI was directed to contract with Voyager Sopris Learning, now Lexia Voyager Sopris, to provide LETRS training to meet this literacy training requirement. LETRS is an acronym that stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. The North Carolina LETRS contract is specific in who may participate in the Letters for Early Childhood Educators professional development. We will spend a couple minutes speaking to each of these groups. NC pre-K teachers who are located in private childcare and Head Start settings are included. For these NC pre-K programs located in private childcare and Head Start sites, one site director or administrator per site is included in the Letters for Early Childhood training opportunity. All LEA preschool teachers are included in the professional development opportunity. This includes public school-based NC pre-K teachers, preschool EC, itinerants, half-day teachers, CTE preschool teachers, and Head Start teachers that are employed through the LEA, to name a few. Even if a teacher has already taken the K-5 version of LETRS, they are still required to take the early childhood course as the content is different and specific to younger learners. LEA district level preschool administrators are included in LETRS for early childhood, only in the circumstance that they provide direct supervision to school-based preschool teachers. For clarification, those district level administrators that conduct observations and evaluations for school-based preschool teachers. Let's consider some examples of how this might play out in a community-based setting. Example 1. ABC Preschool has 2 NC Pre-K classrooms within its building. Those 2 NC Pre-K teachers could participate in LETRS as well as the site director. Example 2. Ramble Road Head Start is a community-based program that has 3 classrooms of 4-year-olds. One of those classrooms is funded through NC Pre-K, and the other 2 are Head Start funded. In this situation, the one NC Pre-K teacher would participate in LETRS along with the site director or administrator. The 2 Head Start funded teachers are not eligible to participate at this time through the state-funded LETRS contract. NCDPI is only able to provide training to people in specific roles. We recognize that there are many other preschool programs and individuals that would appreciate and benefit from this opportunity. Head Start funded teachers, teaching assistants, and district-level preschool administrators, to name a few. For those individuals that are not covered through the state contract, programs have the option to purchase LETRS professional development directly from Lexia. You will find contract information for North Carolina's Lexia representatives on your note catcher. These representatives will be able to assist you should you be interested in seeking professional development sessions outside the state contract. We also want to highlight that there are many other resources publicly available around the science of reading. Starting the conversation around these practices within your centers does not have to be the result of LETRS training. It can be through self-study, book clubs, podcasts, or videos. If there are some teachers training within your building, this could also present them with a great leadership opportunity as they bring back and share information with their colleagues. You can find some great resources to get you started on our NCDPI Science of Reading webpage, linked in your note catcher. So let's talk a little bit about what the structure for LETRS for early childhood educators looks like. You're given 1 year to complete the program based on the schedule with the LETRS point of contact and collaborative partners. Your LETRS for early childhood educators professional development is comprised of 3 main components. The first component is going to be within your manual. There are 4 units, and there are also 4 units of online modules. Each session consists of reading from the manual and online module content. There are 2 face-to-face sessions. After completing units 1 and 2, you will have a face-to-face session with a LETRS facilitator. The sessions are currently held virtually and are 6 hours long. You will either join 1 6-hour session or 2 3-hour sessions based on your program registration. You will complete a second face-to-face 6-hour session after units 4 and 5. The third component is going to be your bridge to practice. This is the application of the teacher's learning within the classroom, where they work with small groups of students to practice what they have learned. Your LETRS manual is going to look like a teacher's core programming manual. It is your text from which you will complete your reading and be able to reference back to. The K-5 LETRS program has a similar setup. However, the K-5 is significantly longer. Their manual is 2 volumes with 4 units per volume and 10 sessions per unit. An FAQ specific to LETRS for early childhood can be found in your note catcher. So let's break down your training a little bit more into what each unit and session is going to look like. Each teacher will complete a pre-test before beginning Unit 1. There are 4 units with a total of 10 sessions within your manual and your online modules. The 2 face-to-face sessions and the bridge to practices are also listed within a link that's provided in your note catcher. The time listed on the far right of the chart is a cumulative time of your module work, reading in the manual, and your bridge to practice. It does not include your face-to-face session time. Unit 1, Early Literacy Foundations, will focus on the background knowledge of the science of reading, state standards, initial assessment, and the beginning of developmentally appropriate practices. Unit 1 consists of 2 sessions and will take approximately 3.5 to 4 hours to complete. Unit 2, Oral Language Connections, will focus on what phonology is and how it relates to the development of oral language. Unit 2 consists of 4 sessions. Session 6 is broken down into 2 parts. All of the components of Session 2 of Unit 2 will take about 7.5 to 9.5 hours to complete. Unit 3, Phonological Foundations, focuses on phonological processing and the development of phonological awareness. Unit 3 has 2 sessions, and Session 8 is divided into 2 smaller parts. Unit 3 will take approximately 4.5 to 5.5 hours to complete. And finally, Unit 4, Print Knowledge, ABC to XYZ. It focuses on the component of print knowledge and how writers are developed. Unit 4 has 2 sessions, and both of those sessions are broken down into 2 parts. Unit 4 will take approximately 4.5 to 5.5 hours to complete. Once you've completed your reading, and for each unit and each session, there will be a unit assessment at the completion. Then, once you've completed all 4 units, there is a accumulating post-test of all of the learning that you've learned throughout all 4 units. Once you complete all 4 units, I mentioned there's a post-test. You will receive an early childhood certificate. A score of greater than 80% yields a certificate of completion. A score of greater than 80% yields a certificate of mastery. A score of below 80% will yield a certificate of completion. The certificate is based on your score on the post-test. The way in which the certificate of completion versus a certificate of mastery are addressed is a leadership decision. For those that receive a certificate of completion, we would certainly recommend a plan for providing additional support to help teachers become more familiar with the content and practices. So what does our timeline look like? The state has been divided into 3 different cohorts for LETRS training. These cohorts allow the state to maximize Lexia's time and training resources. The K-5 version of LETRS takes approximately 2 years to complete, 1 year for Volume 1 and 1 year for Volume 2. Hence, you will see each cohort covers roughly 2 years. At the initial meeting with Lexia, district and community LETRS leaders meet together to plan out the details of those 2 years. As both the administrator and early childhood versions of LETRS only take 1 year to complete, planning teams may decide to schedule these trainings in either year 1 or year 2 of their cycle. Lexia works directly with districts and community LETRS leaders to establish a training plan that supports and aligns to their current calendars. A link of each school district and their assigned cohort is linked in your note capture tool. So we've gotten the question several times, how will training for new teachers offer after the original startup cohort be addressed? So when we have new hires during the duration of the contracted implementation year, teachers will attend pre-scheduled makeup days. We also received the question, when will makeup training sessions be announced for administrators or teachers who missed the virtual day of training? We have makeup sessions coordinated through LETRS contractors. All makeup sessions are scheduled through DPI and released in the weekly RTA memos. If you need to attend a makeup session, you must register through the links provided in the RTA memo. And so you'll see some of the examples of makeup days provided on the slide for cohort 1 or cohort 2. Continuing with the structure from part 1, this is your time to pause and reflect on the content covered. You may finish any thoughts in your notes, jot down any aha moments, or write down a question you still have. So far, today's content has covered who attends LETRS professional development, components of each professional development session, time commitment, requirements for scoring, cohort timelines, and makeup sessions.
Okay, so now we're going to look at some promising practices and resources that can support your successful implementation of LETRS for early childhood educators' professional development. So we all know that sometimes just taking that very first step can be the most difficult with any new endeavor. It's frightening, and there are always questions, and we recognize that people adjust to change at very different rates. So one thing, though, that we have learned from early childhood is that it is an effective and necessary practice to prepare our young learners for upcoming transitions. So in the same spirit, we encourage you to consider how you can support your adult learners through this transition and journey into new learning. So how can you prepare them for what's coming next? One thing that we've heard over and over is that messaging matters. Attitudes are contagious. If leadership coaches, directors, and peers express a positive disposition and excitement about the initiative, then so will others. We encourage you to think of ways that you can build excitement around your LETRS journey. Some examples of this could be kickoff events and celebrations, select a day and plan special activities, invite your communities and families to participate. Post the reading models with no explanations around the building and see if you can ignite curiosity and conversation among your teachers. You could also consider using the quotes from the beginning of each unit in your manual. Create them as posters for your building or include them as conversation starters for inclusion activities at staff meetings. Another idea would be to highlight a Science of Reading podcast or video or resource in your newsletters and communications to help spark self-study and investigation. You could share all of those with your families. Another way to support a strong start is through making intentional connections with others. Sometimes it can be helpful to hear from and collaborate with others who've already started their journey. The quotes on our slide here came from you, our North Carolina Voices from the Field. These, the Voices from the Field who've already began their LETRS journey. So we have a video from Iredell Statesville and Stanley School District, which highlights their initial steps of the journey. We're going to view it now, and it's also available in your note catcher should you want to use it in your district or centers. So please note that the video is specific to school age implementation, and many of the themes and messages are also universally appropriate for those beginning the LETRS for early childhood journey. As you view the video, we encourage you to look for and reflect upon the factors that have contributed to a successful start in these school districts.
I think this is one of the best things we've done in education. I believe it's a holistic package. It's not one size fits all.
Science of Reading, and specifically the LETRS training, does a really good job of explaining the why. And I think a lot of times when teachers understand the why of what they're doing, there's a lot more buy-in and they're motivated to do that because they see the benefits it brings for students.
Many of us who were, in our teacher undergrad were not equipped with this kind of knowledge and training. We're charged with teaching kids to read in the early elementary grades, but most of us weren't taught how to teach kids to read.
We have, in my opinion, just a really unique, exciting opportunity as we get started with this coming school year. Being the instructional coach here, we're going to be able to really support the teachers as they start to gain knowledge of the science of reading.
So we've just begun our implementation with our coaches, and the excitement that we've seen grow just within the coaches team has been amazing.
It's been a lot of aha moments. We've been really excited to think, the reading is so complex and the skills that are needed to not only learn to read, but teach kids how to read are complex.
So we have some teachers now who cannot wait to participate in the LETRS training themselves, just because they've seen how much our coaches have learned.
What we want to do is make sure that we have quality instruction happening in our classrooms. We want to make sure that our phonics program is explicit and systematic, and that students are really developing those letter sound relationships that they need to become proficient readers.
You know, we have one time in a grade level to make it work. And you can't rinse and repeat, unfortunately, because a lot of times we promote those kids on, and if they leave that grade level without the prerequisite skills for the next grade level, they're already behind.
When teachers feel equipped, they are going to feel more confident in the choices they make for their kids. They kind of are able to make sense of data better, data as information, not just random data. And they're just able to make better both collaborative and individual decisions when it comes to what's best for kids and planning instruction.
When I talk about professional development for teachers, it's pragmatic, it's systematic, and it's ongoing to help support you in the classroom. So when you come back from training, it's something you can deploy that has impact on your students. And the science of reading, I think, has hit that.
Absorb it all, take it all in, ask tons of questions. I mean, for me, I think it's going to be by far some of the best training they've received, and really wish they would have received it when they left the college building and started their career. I know for me, I wish I knew what I knew now starting back then.
So by all means, as a superintendent, don't go out on your own and be a silo. Reach out to the districts that have started this. There's a sort of a consortium already started of people in the state.
Just being really open-minded, being excited, and know that at the end of this, we could be able to serve some of these kids so much better. Anytime that we can do that, I think it's something to be excited about.
I love that. When teachers are equipped, they feel more confident. I think that's my favorite phrase out of that video. So our cohort 1 districts who began their journey at the onset of the school year have been able to share their experiences and success stories to help those in the following cohorts. So some additional tips that they have shared speak to how critical communication is between leadership and those working through the professional development series. So it's important for teachers to understand the why, be able to communicate how the research supports this as a best practice, highlight success stories from across the country and our state, and make sure to communicate how this will benefit our students. Transparency is important. LETRS is a heavy lift, and we need to be clear about that. Be upfront with your teachers about the time investment and format of the learning sessions to come. Pacing guides are one of the most helpful tools that we continue to hear about. It is difficult to catch up when you are behind, so proactive tools such as pacing guides can help teachers stay organized upfront to support their success. On the screen, you're going to see an example of a pacing guide for LETRS for early childhood. It outlines due dates for each session and lets teachers know when their face-to-face or virtual group PD will occur. This can be found within the early childhood planning document, and we've also included the LETRS early childhood estimated time by unit in the note catcher, and that can help support you in developing your own pacing guide. So research tells us that there are significant positive outcomes when we are able to support professional development through coaching and feedback. So once you're on your way with your LETRS journey, we encourage you to consider ways that you can enrich teachers' learning and help transfer their new knowledge to new practices. LETRS for Little Learners, Conversations and Classroom Connections is one tool that can support and solidify a teacher's learning as they work through the LETRS professional development learning elements. The guide can help teachers and teacher leaders think about what they are already doing with students in their classroom and helps apply knowledge gained from their LETRS sessions to the classroom instruction. It is composed of a guiding document and a slide deck that's meant to be facilitated within a collaborative group of teachers and teacher leaders, such as coaches or administrators, after you've completed the corresponding sessions and coursework. So we're excited about introducing this resource to you today, and we're going to unpack it just a little further in today's session. We received several questions about sustainability beyond these initial implementation years. Once teachers have completed their LETRS training, there will be no follow-up training or refreshers required. We do encourage that teachers continue to collaborate within communities of practice to support ongoing learning, reflective practices, and instructional improvements. There are many individuals at the state level working through training to become certified LETRS facilitators at this very moment. Your Office of Early Learning, and Early Literacy Regional Consultants, to name a few. In the future, trainings will be offered by these state facilitators to assist districts and communities in supporting the training of new teachers and administrators. With the additional funds that are being supplied to LEAs, we also strongly encourage districts to begin building their own sustainability plans with the consideration of adding their own district level facilitators. LETRS facilitators are certified specific to each of the K-5 volumes and the early childhood version, as the content for each of these areas is different. So with that said, it is important that preschool representatives are collaborating with their school age counterparts to ensure that developing early childhood LETRS facilitators is also a part of the district sustainability plan. LETRS facilitators are the only group of trained individuals that must regularly recertify. So as districts begin to develop their own LETRS facilitators, it will build a local support system for the continuation of this work and provide districts and communities with greater flexibility in meeting the needs of their new teachers and administrators. So if you would like to know more about the facilitator certification program, please see the link that has been provided in your note catcher tool. In addition, please know that NCDPI is in collaboration with DHHS to ensure sustainability for our community-based NC Pre-K programs. We recognize that implementation is a lot to think about. One benefit of our cohort model is that we can lean on those that have already initiated LETRS training and learn from their experiences. On this slide, you will note some tips and advice offered through our Cohort 1 districts. We encourage you to further explore 2 resources that share and highlight those experiences of those who've already begun their journey. The first is a tips and tricks from the field, lessons learned from Cohort 1. And the second resource we would like to highlight is from a session conducted in collaboration with NC Principal and Assistant Principal Association. Amy Gear, who is with Guilford County's Department of Early Learning and who is a LETRS for Early Childhood District Facilitator, speaks to her district's experience with implementation. She shares lots of great insights and resources that are preschool specific. Again, both of these resources can be found on your note catcher tool for later review. So LETRS training and implementation, as with many new initiatives, can feel like a looming mountain. The climb is not easy, and just as in this picture in the upper right, we want you to know that you have people who can extend a helping hand. We recognize that we have many people on this call today with various roles and titles, so this chart outlines the different types of assistance you may need and who the most appropriate contact will be to assist you. For LEA-based preschool programs, we would initially direct you to your school and district level supports following the protocols that have been locally established for you. Should you be a district level preschool support person or administrator, please feel free to reach out to your Office of Early Learning consultants. We're happy to assist you. If you are a community-based NC Pre-K program, we would like to direct you back to the flow chart that was shared with you yesterday. This outlines the communication channels for the NC Pre-K side of our LETRS equation. Links to both the OEL Early Learning Consultants and the LETRS district's points of contact are included on your note catcher. So let's take a moment to pause and reflect once more. Our most recent content has covered starting strong, district voices, a brief look at supporting professional growth, sustainability, and helpful contacts for your journey.
As mentioned earlier, the Office of Early Learning is currently working on a resource to support discussion around the science of reading and its application to the early childhood classroom. LETRS for Little Learners, Conversations, and Classroom Connections. Studies show professional development is most effective when it is paired with follow-up and coaching conversations. Conversations and Classroom Connections promotes professional, reflective conversation based on knowledge gained through LETRS coursework stimulates connections between LETRS coursework and classroom practice, and leverages teacher documentation and data collection to inform classroom instruction. Considerations are also made for NC Foundations and ECHRS alignment, with a strong focus on developmentally appropriate practices and how learning from LETRS enhances those practices. Many of you have collaborative time scheduled for teacher planning and/or professional development. If so, conversations and classroom connections may be integrated into this time. Others may not yet have a time for professional development intentionally integrated into their schedule. Intentionally scheduling time for meaningful conversations around literacy and language development is important for both teachers and children. Again, the LEA or school district and NC pre-K sites housed outside school buildings should collaborate and include all state-funded pre-K teachers in these valuable conversations. Within the LETRS for Little Learners Conversations and Classroom Connections framework, both face-to-face and virtual activities are included for flexibility in meeting the unique needs of various structures. Each session of Conversations and Classroom Connections will include 4 parts. Part 1, connect with each other. According to Castle, rituals or routine openings establish safety and predictability, support contribution by all voices, set norms for respectful listening, and allow people to connect with one another, creating a sense of belonging. Part 2, connect with content. This session provides reflection time to discuss new learning and knowledge. Some content that is likely to be less familiar to pre-K teachers starting their science of reading journey will be reviewed as well. Part 3, connect with classroom. New learning and bridge to practice experiences can be most effective when connected to prior knowledge. This session provides opportunities to integrate and apply new knowledge into current classroom practices. It also highlights practices that may already be in place that are connected to the science of reading, and conversations are promoted around what we're already doing, but also the why behind what we're doing. Part 4, reflect forward. According to Castle, professional learning ends by having participants reflect on, then name something that helps them leave on an optimistic note. For those of you who participated yesterday, your reflect forward and optimistic closure was sharing your next conversation with someone around LETRS or the science of reading. The second of Castle's 3 signature practices is engaging practices. Throughout each session, these practices are noted as engagement. Oftentimes, there are options, again, for face-to-face and for virtual meetings, and it is important to choose the activity that best fits the group's needs. Conversations and Classroom Connections is intended to be very user-friendly, meaning a facilitator can use it as is. However, it may also be altered to best meet the needs of individuals in your group. If you have a structure in place and would like to include a select group of activities from the presented information, that is acceptable as well. Let's take a peek into a conversation and walk through the structure of each session. For the first session, facilitators will see tips, or will have instructions and tips. Included in these tips are the Castle signature practices. So we have connect with each other, connect with content, connect with classroom, and reflect forward. The icons will keep this structure consistent for all sessions. What I'm sharing now is session 1, which also includes the welcome for LETRS for early childhood educators. This includes much of the background information of the science of reading, which we covered in yesterday's session. So I'm going to scroll down to where session 1 starts, and you will be able to see the structure of all following sessions. Session 1, and each session will have the unit and session to begin with, and then we will have highlights from each session. Again, this is to keep the structure consistent for all sessions. In particular, session 1 highlights foundational areas, developmentally appropriate practices, and addresses explicit direct instruction versus instructional modeling and when each of those are appropriate. Instructional practice, there are connections to developmentally appropriate practices from NAEYC's most recent update. And so we connect that, and you can see here, as mentioned before, you have an engagement activity. So participants will engage virtually or face-to-face. And for this one, they're reading a quote directly, and then they're invited to share out and share words or phrases that stood out to them to promote that professional conversation. And then we address foundational areas, and with those foundational areas, they are unpacked as well and also related to foundations and the NC Pre-K crosswalk, which we looked at yesterday. This is an example of when we give you multiple options to, depending on your group's needs and how you can facilitate with this resource being ready to use. As we discussed yesterday, Scarborough's rope is mentioned many, many times throughout the letters and with science of reading in general. So we link back to that and how those connections may already be made in early childhood classrooms and how we can enhance and become more intentional with those connections. And we also pull quotes from the manual and also from DAP, NAEYC, and other guiding works with pre-K so that we can always make those connections and see where there are overlapping pieces that we can really hone in on between letters and other guiding works. We provide examples for, as you can see here, we have during center time, we have examples for during whole group time, and during snack and meal time that we are integrating that literacy throughout the day. There are optional slides included that address the 9 principles of NAEYC's developmentally appropriate practices, which are the same that we reviewed yesterday in part 1 of the session. And then we review explicit instruction and modeling. Instruction and guided play is another engagement piece for participants to stop, reflect, share out words and phrases that they connect to, and resources are shared. These are the resources that were shared in yesterday's session with preschool literacy resources and literacy at home. And then the session wraps up with reflecting forward. And this is, again, that optimistic closure that provides, that ends professional learning by having participants reflect on, then name something that helps them leave on an optimistic note. And this provides the intentional closure, opens space for expressing disequilibrium, reinforces the topic, and creates momentum towards taking action. All right. We would like you to pause and reflect after reviewing the conversations and classroom connections and jot down notes about conversations and classroom connections for the teachers you support or the teachers you work with. Who would attend? Is there time set aside for professional conversations, or does a plan need to be developed? What changes will be seen in the classroom? The answer to this question will vary. We recognize that each individual is in a different place along their science of reading journey. A small tweak may seem like a large leap to someone else. The goal is for educators to gain knowledge and deepen their understanding of language and literacy development, understand predicative indicators of later reading and writing abilities, and build each child's important foundation that is needed for a smooth transition into early reading and writing in the primary grades. Teachers will begin to implement strategies and routines through bridge to practice activities, which are embedded in each session. Over time, these strategies and routines will be intentionally integrated into classroom instruction to benefit each child's language and literacy development. New knowledge and meaningful conversations will lead to gradual incorporation and change in classroom practices based on new knowledge gained from LETRS professional development. When we know better, we do better. As teachers discuss upcoming classroom plans, strategies and routines to support literacy and language development will surface. For example, Session 6 of LETRS for early childhood educators, reading and online modules include language stimulation strategies. Tune in, talk more, and take turns. Many of you may have heard of this strategy already. Tune in means to be in the moment by paying attention to what the child is focused on and talking about. What children focus on is always changing, as you know, so stay tuned in and change your words to match. Once you tune in, talk more with the child. Remember, every word you say fills their vocabulary bank. When you tune in and talk more, you automatically take turns. Self-talk and parallel talk promote receptive language. Let's watch a quick explanation of the two strategies.
Self-talk is simply talking about what you are doing. Think of it as providing narration for your own actions, similar to what you might see on a cooking show. Here's an example of self-talk in action. Vroom, vroom. Push the truck. I'll make it go fast. Oops, too fast. With self-talk, I talked about what I was doing. Parallel talk is talking about what your child is doing. Think of it as providing a play-by-play of what you see, just like a sportscaster. Here's an example of parallel talk in action. Vroom, vroom. Whoa, you pushed the truck. You got it. With parallel talk, I talked about what my child was doing.
Another strategy shared in session 6 is recasting and expansion, which promotes expressive language. Let's watch another quick video.
Expanding means taking what your child has communicated and adding on a little more information. Expansion can be used to add information to any form of communication. If your child points to a dog, you can say, dog. By labeling the dog, you've added a little more information. If your child points to a dog and says, dog, you can expand their word by saying, look at that big dog. If your child says, doggy, run, you can expand their short sentence by saying, the dog runs fast. Recasting means taking something that your child has communicated that might not be quite correct and saying it back the correct way with emphasis on the new information. If your child says, me want cookie, you can recast their sentence by saying, I want a cookie. If your child says, that dog run really fast, you can recast their sentence by saying, yes, that dog ran really fast. If your child says, him kicked the ball, you can recast their sentence by saying, he kicked the ball far. By using expansion and recasting, you can help your child continue to grow their vocabulary, increase their grammatical development, and improve their overall communication skills.
We know that those 4 strategies are used throughout many pre-K classrooms, which is nice to hear because we know that we are already implementing much of the science of reading. We're increasing our intentionality and the understanding of why we do what we do. Interactive storybook routines and strategies for multiple readings of books are shared in session 6 of the LETRS content as well. As shared yesterday, the Office of Early Learning developed read aloud templates and examples for pre-K teachers. As teachers deepen their understanding of literacy and language development through reading, online modules, and bridge to practice activities, changes will be seen in the classroom. For some, changes may be big. For others, changes may be simply increasing intentionality. For part 2, for LETRS for Little Learners, we had 2 expected outcomes. 1, explore the content and participant experience for LETRS for early childhood educators, and provide guidance, promising practices, and resources for successful implementation of LETRS professional development. Before completing our session today, we would like you to participate and join us in Castle's 3rd signature practice, an optimistic closure. Within your note taker, answer the following question, which is a little different than yesterday's question. Who will you talk to next about letters in the science of reading? Was yesterday's question. Today, specifically, who will you talk to next about letters professional development, implementation, and resources related to the science of reading? What will you discuss with them? If you would like to, you can drop those in the chat again like you did yesterday, and we'll give you a few moments to do so. We appreciate each of you and the support you provide to young learners in the state of North Carolina. Thank you for attending today to increase your knowledge of literacy and language development and letters professional development.